It is time 1:10. I call to order the Fort Bend County Elections Commission meeting, and the people will be in the board members are KP George County Judge Carmen Turner, Tax Assessor Collector, Laura Richard, County Clerk, Cindy Ginia, Democratic Party Chair, and Linda Howell, a Republican Party Chairwoman. And so at this point, what we will do is and a meeting of the Fort Bend County Election Commission has been called. I decided to have this discussion because, and there is an upcoming election, and there is a lot of, misunderstanding and also distrust in the election system. I'm not talking about Fort Bend County in general. So we just want to make sure we are prepared and we have a clear understanding of, fixing all the hiccups we had, and so that we are only almost 2.5 months away from our primary to start. So we want to make sure we are prepared. That's the reason why we are doing it. Like I said, the meeting is called at 1:10. And so you're going to read it? Okay, please.
Okay. Number 2, approve minutes of meeting held on February 3rd, 2021.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Number 3.
No.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. And now, go ahead.
3, review and analyze the Fort Bend County 2021 election cycle and administration and take all appropriate action.
Okay. So here, do we need a motion and second to start? No, this is a discussion. This is where we will ask our election administrator, John Odom, to come up and talk about, we have a report. And also, as you know, we have a number of issues last year when we were conducting our last election cycle. And so, yeah.
I sent you a Dexter's request, a draft report.
This is the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that was, we didn't get started on this till Tuesday. So,
Okay.
there was a few changes made, nothing substantial. Okay, 2021 was what had been referenced, and we did have the fewest elections, which was only 4 that we've had in several years. That compares to 6 in 2020. In 2022, we anticipate 6 elections again, but 4 of them will come in the first 4 months. And these are going to be, unfortunately, 3 of them will be countywide elections. 1, the primary, the 2nd, the primary runoff, and 3rd, the city school election on May 7th, which normally is not countywide unless the court puts a bond issue or some other public question on. However, there will be 2 more constitutional amendments appearing on that May ballot that was added during the second special session of the legislature. Thanks to Senator Betancourt, we will have
Countywide
elections there, which is problematic for us. I think we have enough equipment. In other words, we have a week's window between the city school election and the start of early voting for the primary runoff. 10 years ago, we only had 2 days there, but fortunately, we didn't have countywide. So, at least on the city school. This time, we anticipate that, although we may not have to have all the polling places open. We may not have to on the runoff. Although the election for party officials has been moved to the primary runoff. As the party chairs know, they won't appear on the the March ballot. So that may increase the likelihood that we will have a countywide election, or we definitely will, that most everything will be open. And then again, this is going to stretch us with personnel, to some extent with equipment, and also with delivery. In 2020, we had to change the way we deliver our equipment. The auditor's office pointed out to us that, in the past we had always used road and bridge drivers and rented 26-foot trucks with lift gates in order to deliver stuff, and we pretty much did it ourselves. But we don't, we had to use 4 to 5 trucks. Our auditor's office pointed out that because road and bridge personnel were paid partly with federal motor fuel money, that we should cease doing that. And so our only alternative was to go to a third-party contractor, which purchasing found A Rocket, which moves all the stuff around in the county. The downside of that in the general election last year, the delivery costs were in the neighborhood of $150,000, which was about $130,000 more than we'd anticipated renting trucks. Now, that was a huge election, a lot of equipment. We hope we never see that much again, but it put a lot of strain on budget strain, but it also put strain going forward. We're hoping our vendor will be able to pick up election day equipment from the city of the school election and still be able to deliver in that time frame the early voting equipment to mostly the same locations, depending on how many we have. So we've had to do that before. We've had to walk in with racks of equipment and cabinets during the middle of early voting for one election to deliver another. That was 10 years ago, but it does present a challenge to us. The 87th legislature also passed some bills which greatly will influence how we do things. One is the canceling of ballot by mail. And it didn't really change the law on canceling ballot by mail. Under the Texas Election Code, if Cynthia applied for a ballot by mail and she decided she wanted to vote in person, she had to surrender that ballot or fill out an affidavit saying that she didn't get it, the dog ate it, she just left it at home, she lost it, whatever. And that if that was the case, if she did not surrender, she was supposed to vote provisionally. For years, we haven't done that, and a lot of bigger counties did not do it who had electronic poll books and could immediately tell if somebody had returned a ballot by mail. The reason we didn't follow the law exactly was because there was no penalty for not doing so. This legislature passed a penalty which made it now illegal for us to do that. It would fall on us, it would fall on our poll workers to allow somebody to vote provisionally or to allow somebody to vote other than provisionally. Now, that wasn't a big problem in this past election, the one in November. That law went into effect September 1. We had a few more. We didn't have very many provisional ballots, most of which were related to ballot by mail, and so most of which counted. Those statistics are in your handout. But last November, we canceled over 8,000 ballots in polling places. So that would have made the long lines even longer. So we're going to have to do a better job or we'll have to do a good job of educating voters that if they would choose to cancel this ballot by mail in person without surrendering, that they will have to vote provisionally. And again, that was always the law, but there was no penalty for not doing it. Now there is.
So now it is going to be got to be provisional.
It's going to be that they have to vote provisionally, and hopefully we'll put an insert in with the ballot by mail.
Yeah.
Today we received new forms from the state. We knew they were coming. We'd received them about an hour and a half for this meeting. There's a new ballot by mail form, which I hope you and Cynthia and Linda make sure they're, and I think that Veronica is emailing those to you. But now voters are required to include on their application either their TDL or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. Essentially, the law says if they don't, if it doesn't match our records, that we have to reject that application. Now, this is, everybody running elections in Texas knew this was going to be a huge problem, and one of the reasons why is that we have over 6,000 people in this county that we don't have a TDL on. We don't have any identifying number on that would correspond to this, and the reason being is most of them are old. They registered to vote before we collected TDLs or before we collected Social Security numbers. So we worry that these 6,000 people will submit applications and not put down the right number or not put down any number at all. They can correct that, but we don't know yet how they will be able to correct it. We've got to wait for a directive on the Secretary of State. We don't know if they submit a number that we don't have in our records, if we can use that to update our records. Again, we'll have to wait for a directive. Again, we just got this. We knew this was going to happen, but we just got the forms today. Also, the yellow carrier envelope that voters mail back their ballot in has been or will be changed. And underneath the flap that is sealed, they have to put the same number down they put on their application. And ostensibly, the idea would be that the ballot board would reject that. However, it has to be a concealed number so somebody can't see it. So it has to be underneath the flap, and we don't have a clue how the ballot board, how we'll ascertain that number is there unless we open the envelope, which the ballot board's supposed to do. So that means that if they don't do it until they process the ballots, which would begin about 10 days before the election, that'd be a very limited amount of time for somebody to fix it. But again, we're waiting. We've got to wait for direction from the SOS, which I suspect won't come until the first of the year. We just got the forms at about 10 o'clock today. So that's a challenge that we will have to face and probably spend a lot of time contacting voters and making them unhappy and telling them that they don't, they haven't done what they needed to do. So it's important that the two parties contact their potential candidates who mail out these pre-printed applications. One of the things Senate Bill 8 did, it made it illegal for me or for the judge to distribute ballot by mail applications, but candidates in their capacity still could. So he couldn't, Judge George could, as a candidate, distribute pre-printed ballot by mail applications, but as a judge, he cannot. So, in fact, we can't even distribute them unless they are requested by the voters. So we've always, the bulk of our ballot by mail applications are always come from candidates, and it's very important that they get the right information on there for the voters. Otherwise, we'll be rejecting all these things, and that so somebody could waste $10,000. And yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay, John, with the new ballot by mail application,
Right.
We'll have one very shortly.
You've had one emailed to you. In fact, I'll give you a copy of it right now. I think I have copies with me. No, I don't. But it was emailed to you, probably around 11.
Okay,
So,
this morning.
yeah.
Okay, all right, good.
Because we just got it. They just released it around 10 today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that we can make sure candidates have that and
Right.
not sending old information
Old
or
information.
something that is not current with.
Yeah, and we hopefully, I'm not sure, we've for the last week not been able to make any updates to our website. We've got to put in a ticket request to IT. I think that will change in January. Is that right? Yeah. But so I think that we've already sent that over to IT with a request to update the form on our webpage.
Also, this is a little delayed. Provisional ballots. When a person can do the provisional ballot, whatever the case might be, because they came to vote and they were sent a mail by ballot, and we can't go in the system and look up anymore as we used to do.
Right.
So
Well, we can look them up, but we just can't. We still have to get them to vote
do the provisional ballot.
Right.
Share with us what that means when I vote with a provisional ballot.
Well, for the, if you look on the information I just gave you for, go down to the not May 1st, but to this past November's election. We had very few provisionals. We had 18,
Okay.
but 11 of them were accepted. And I
Okay.
think all 11 of those were people who voted provisionally because they had submitted or not returned a ballot by mail. So
Okay.
if come election day or the day after the election, if we determine they haven't returned it, that provisional will count.
Sure.
It's just like somebody with a photo who didn't have a photo ID. And we've had, since that law went into effect 10 years ago, we probably have had less than 10.
Yes.
We had one in that election. The voters said they were going to bring in their ID. That's one of the 18 that did not count. But they didn't. And I can understand why. They lived in Houston, and to come all the way over here to show an ID for an election that's already been decided, I can understand why they didn't do it. Because all they were voting on was constitutional amendments.
When I vote provisionally, I get the entire slate.
You get
that
everything,
I have
yes.
If I had,
That is
actually
correct.
voted.
You get the same ballot everybody else does in your district, whatever your ballot style is.
Okay. Yeah. Right. According to
Yeah.
your precinct and all the other district areas, is it counted with the? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm asking.
Well, if
when
it's
is
an
it
early
counted?
voting provisional, if it's one that occurs during early voting, and I think in this case we only had one during early voting this past November, and I don't really know if that one counted or not.
Sure.
But if it's during the early voting period, we generally include those in the results that are posted election night because the ballot board can process those on election day. The other ones, if they come in, if the provisionals issued on election day, then we generally, for example, a Tuesday election, would wait until the following Monday because that's the voter, if it's an ID-related provisional, has until Friday to bring in that ID. And we also have to wait until Monday for any overseas ballots to come in.
Sure.
So if it's on a Saturday election, we have to wait till Friday. So we just do all those at the same time.
Okay.
Any further question on that matter?
And again, provisionals, the main reason the main reason since 95 that we have provisionals are people who think they're registered and they're not. It used to be people who voted in the wrong precinct, but you can't do that anymore.
Right.
So that cut out 30% of our provisionals. The people who vote in the wrong precinct has been almost exclusively people who are not registered but think they are registered. And some of that is that they've been canceled because they didn't respond to a notice.
Right.
And they may have been canceled 10 years ago. We had a lot of that this past November, people that hadn't voted in years, and they moved out of the county, moved back, and or people who sometimes go online, and one of the first questions we ask, how did you register? Well, I did it online. Well, our response is, there's no online registration in Texas. Now we sort of have it. So that'll be a little bit more complicated. But we have a portal with DPS, so if they say, I went to DPS, and when? Oh, I don't know. Well, look at your driver's license. When did you renew it? Well, May. So we'll send that information to DPS, and usually within a few hours they will tell us that person, in fact, did register, and we screwed up and didn't send you the info. Or they didn't register. Here's a screenshot of where they checked the box saying that they don't want to register. So,
I always have my reservations about that anyway, because you have to have a signature
sure.
to be registered, and you can't do that on the on that computer system. That means they have to have printed it and then signed, and
Right.
So I just don't fancy that at all.
Unfortunately, a lot of the registrations we get come from DPS now,
Okay.
and they come electronically, and we do not have signatures on those people.
Yeah. So that's
Well, again, we can maybe jump to, I think I've covered most of the things here that I didn't have in the report. We had, again, 4 elections. One was a very small one, City of Stafford, a special election to replace Cecil Willis in his council position. We also had our city school election, which went very well last May. We had our election this November, which by and large went very well. One of the things that we've seen, and we knew this all along, but it's gotten very much more pronounced, is that, for example, this November, almost 60% of our voters voted in 20 out of 80 polling places. So 60 of those sites are, have nothing to do all day, and the other ones are slammed. And it's been a trend all along, but it's accelerating. And I think that goes on with the longer that we use the site for early voting, the more people are used to going there. Maybe you didn't vote there this year, but maybe last year you did, or 2 years ago you did, or your wife voted there, so that's where you're going to go. And it's a real phenomenon that we're seeing that, for example, if we compare the elections in 2021, 2019, and 2017, 2017 and 2021 were pretty comparable in terms of turnout. But 2019 was huge. We had more people vote on Election Day in 2019 than we did last November in the presidential election. So if we look at, for example, 2017 and 2021, we see an acceleration of the number of people who are gravitating toward early voting sites. And some places like Bowie just can't handle the volume. Yeah.
Very packed there.
Sure. Any discussion about, because that place is a small a room at Bowie, and so no other option available there?
We've looked and looked and looked. We used to vote at a Baptist church on 359. They got rid of us about 7 or 8 years ago. We've tried to get in the country club, couldn't do it. I'm trying to find some relief. We've requested to use the new mud building that is being built on Pitts Road. We've not gotten an answer from them yet, not for early voting, but at least for Election Day, in order to relieve some of the congestion at Bowie. But so far, we've not found anything in that area that would accommodate, that will let us vote for 2 weeks of early voting. That's the problem.
So generally, facilities don't mind Election Day. It's that 2-week period.
Yeah, it's not so, particularly schools and all.
Right.
So, for example, we voted for the last couple of years at the high school in Fulshire, and we've done in the PAC lobby. Well, now in the primary, they're going to move us to, I think, the middle school or junior high. I'm not sure which, because they have a spring performance scheduled that same week in the high school PAC. And that's where most of these schools we tend to vote, is in the lobby of the performing arts centers.
Right. Isn't there a middle school right there?
They have a middle, a junior high, and a
Bowie
high school. No, not Bowie, Fulshire. They're all three lined up there.
Well, that's right. Bowie is a middle school.
Bowie is a middle school, correct.
Yeah.
The only thing going for Bowie is it has decent parking. We used to vote in Pecan Grove Elementary, which had about 4 parking spaces, and Austin Elementary, which had about 6. So when we went to countywide polling places, we dropped those.
Right.
We also had a polling place at Swinging Door, which we dropped because they have a gravel parking lot.
Yeah,
that's
they
not
certainly
ADA
do.
compliant.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's maybe with that, I believe the election, whatever we passed, any more discussion, anything you
Just
want to
only
bring
if
it
you
up?
want to know information.
And also, I assume, of course, it mentioned major projects, redistricting, obviously, the state and county redistricting. It's all been presented to you in a timely fashion, I believe.
Well, we're in limbo right now. We have our voter registration files have been in a sandbox environment converted over to new precincts and new districts. However, we can't migrate those into our system, because before we do so, we have to make changes in what's called TEAM. And TEAM is a state VR and election management system. The day we tried to do this, everybody in the state was doing it, and the system crashed. The next week, we could get in and we could do some minor things like eliminate Higher Ed District 4, add a couple of new districts, add some new precinct numbers, but so far we cannot associate those precincts with districts. And we're not alone in that. I mean, there's a number of, I know Montgomery was in the same boat and a lot of other counties. The Secretary of State's office said they've referred it to their IT department, but for right now, we don't know when that's going to be resolved, and until it is, we can't migrate our data. We had it scheduled for the Wednesday after or the week after you did this work on the Tuesday meeting. So we had to postpone that, and it's just simply in limbo. We don't like that at all, but it's what it is. And until we get that fixed, until we get that data entered, we can't mail out new voter certificates.
Okay, with that, we will move on. Another question I have, obviously our new voting system, and we had numerous conversations about there were some glitches and there's some issues, and so one question I will ask is obviously 2020 elections, we had software issues and connectivity issues and all. What are the steps being taken?
Well, we think that most of those issues have been resolved by training. A lot of them were user error, some by us, a lot by our poll workers, some things that we've learned after the fact that we didn't know. For example, IT thought we had a problem with our tablets, and so they talked to the vendor sent them some more tablets. They replaced some of them, and you don't even know this. So we just found this out. We sent in some equipment to be repaired, and they said, oh my God, these tablets and the system don't match. They're not been integrated, which was one reason you replaced them and they didn't work. But you didn't know that, and we didn't know that. We had really no issues in the last 3 elections with our poll books. We're not using an electronic poll book in this Missouri City election because we couldn't create one and then run the risk of it not working because of the changes in the precinct numbers. So we're using paper, but it's one polling place and one early voting site. But so far we've not had any issues other than by and large user issues. There's some steps they have to do when they turn their kiosk on that are related to the ES&S software to run the printer. And they have 2 steps they have to do. They probably, the first day or the election day, probably 20 of them didn't do it. So we get calls from them. I talked to 5 of them, and it took about a minute to fix it. So that's a user issue. We try to do as much training as we can. However, we are talking with ES&S, and they think they have a solution that hopefully will be in place before November. Whereas when they turn the laptop on, it will automatically go through these 2 steps that the poll workers have to do. That will solve what our current problem is. We still have some connectivity issues. That's not a huge deal. And if we're talking about connectivity with our server, if they go offline, they usually come back on within 30 or 40 seconds. If it stays off much longer, we call them and walk them through connecting. But they still can vote people. It doesn't affect their ability to process voters and cast ballots.
So you're saying first of all, last 2 or 3 elections are very small elections comparing.
Well, compared to November 2020, we did deploy. Well, for example, we had in November 2020 we had 85 election day sites opened. Earlier this month we had 80. So it's in terms of the amount of sites connecting and processing voters, it's pretty close. It just wasn't as many voters being processed.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I understand that November race was a huge race. It was a presidential race, and this is going to be a governor's race. And I guess my biggest concern with me being at the polls, pretty much every poll that we had to go to, there was a lot of IT stuff that needed to be done, and there was not. It took a minute for IT to get there. It took some moments, as you know, Ms.
Yeah, actually, Carmen,
Yes.
I'm going to, as soon as
Okay.
John just completed, and I will ask our
Is that gonna
IT
be IT
director to
question?
come up, and
Okay.
and then we will call both of them if you have any
Okay,
questions.
I wasn't
and
sure if
things
that
like
was
that.
IT
Yeah.
or if that was
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Well, it was what we had in November was a variety of things. One, it was unfamiliarity with new equipment, and not enough equipment. We migrated to these poll kiosks, and one reason we did was we have had a lot of blowback over the recent years, due to security reasons for poll watchers, or workers rather, asking voters to state their address, or for them to verbally state their address and the poll worker confirm it. That was required by law. So we wanted a system that would allow the voter's current address to be displayed on a screen, and the voter may say, yes, that's correct, or no, it's not, and then they do the forms to update. Also, for the last, since the last primary, it's been a legal requirement that voters can non-verbally choose their party. Last time we simply had cards out there for them to point to, but now they can do it on the screen, so when they come in and they check in, they don't have to ask, the poll worker doesn't ask them, do you want a Democrat ballot or do you want a Republican ballot? They can touch the screen and make that choice. We had planned on utilizing these kiosks much earlier, but we had some elections canceled, and also all our equipment canceled in 2020 due to the COVID. So we wound up doing a lot of implementation in November 2020, which we normally would not have done. I mean, I would avoid that like the plague, but we didn't have a lot of choice. It was an unusual year. We also had a much bigger than normal turnout. The gubernatorial election years are different. Normally in this county, in a presidential year, we have about a 69 to 70% turnout. We had, I believe, a 73 or 4.
74.
Normally in a gubernatorial election, we have anywhere from 39 to 43%, 44% maybe turnout. 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, that jumped up to 60%.
60%.
And that, we don't know if that will happen again this year or if it won't. There's no way to know. We're going to try to prepare for that 60% turnout, but we don't know if we'll have people sitting around doing nothing or not. One of our considerations when we do any of this stuff, it's not so much equipment, but it's staffing. Each one of these poll workers, if we don't have enough, they can't they can't operate 2 kiosks, for example. But on the other hand, we have a budget, and if we add 2 poll workers to every polling place, we're looking at 80 times about $300 or $250 per worker to add a worker. So if we add 2, that's $500 per site. That's 80, that's $40,000, which we may or may not have. So we've got to balance realistically, the needs, and for example, in your primary or your primary, against the money that everybody has available to operate
But
on.
John, one thing, election maybe is the most important thing, especially this day and age.
That's true.
We don't have money. I don't think that is an excuse can go that far.
Well,
so
it's not necessarily money, it's money in my budget. So.
Yeah, but we need to, if that's the case, you need to come and ask for money.
Yeah.
With
and I've done that, and I will be doing that
Yeah.
this year because, for example, this May election that I mentioned that will be countywide, that's not in our budget.
Yeah.
That was to be a city school election. They're paying 100% of the cost.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be paying at least 50%.
Yeah. And you know that we are not, none of us, I cannot talk for any of our board members, but none of us really, at least I am not worried about the May elections. I'm not worried about the off-year November election, especially, this year just we had. I don't think we are worried about it. We are worried about the midterm election. We are worried about the general election and, of course, the primary. Sure. And so what we will do is, obviously our new machines, and I understand we are still learning, but we had numerous issues. And so how you are engaging, because the thing about it is this is the connectivity issues and all were everywhere experienced. So how you are engaging with our IT department. So the reason I asked that because, IT department, in my opinion, should be the go-to person or go-to department when it comes to technology, because that's what they do when it comes to the justice system, jail system, the records, you name it, everything. So how you guys are working,
Well, I've been here 13 and a half years, and we've always enjoyed a good relationship with our IT department. One of the things I did mention to him recently, and maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was somebody else, but for years we had an assigned person. a liaison between our office and IT. When he retired, we haven't had that. And I think there's a lot of value to it. This guy came in our office every week. He went to conferences with us. He learned what we do. And so I think bringing that back would be a good step.
But I also, John, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want you to know that things changed in Fort Bend County. You know, what happened in 10 years ago is not going to work. And so now we have a new system, and we need more of technology involvement. And I'm not a technology person. If my computer doesn't work, I just call them. I mean, you know, so that's the way I look at it. And you have a role. You are the election administrator. And I don't know, you have time to sit and fix a computer issue. So that's where we had conversation at a commissioner's court level also about it. So what I will suggest is, John, if you will we could call you with further question if you have completed what you wanted to discuss with the report. I would ask you to
Probably so, other until where we get to the end, because you'd ask about what we see as future problems. When we bought this system, we did not buy a maintenance agreement on it. So therefore, and our vendor has been very good during the first year about taking care of stuff that they didn't have to. They won't do that forever.
Can you explain that they didn't have to? What does that mean?
A maintenance agreement means that
No. When you buy, there is no warranty on this item?
Oh, there is a warranty. It's 1 year.
So that means why you're saying they don't have to do it, still they did it?
No, they still did it.
No, my question is anything I buy, it is at least come with a year warranty.
And this did.
Okay.
But it's out of warranty.
Okay. Passed now, out of warranty.
Passed by nearly a year.
Okay.
So the vendor's been very good about assisting us with this. There's more than twice as much equipment as we had with our old system, and it has moving parts. The E-Slates, the only thing that moved was that wheel. And so if things broke, we generally cannibalized the things. This is more complicated. There's 3 different platforms, a lot of moving parts, a lot of mechanical parts in addition to electronic. We've learned how to do certain things, but in terms of going through, typically most jurisdictions will once a year go through and test all their equipment and clean it, do preventive maintenance if it needs to be done, and then if they find something wrong, send it to the vendor for hardware depot maintenance. We don't have an agreement for them to do that.
So what was the reason we didn't buy an agreement?
Well, we didn't buy it because we hadn't had one with our other vendor.
But it was the old system.
With the old system.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know you may not agree with me, but this purchase was a pretty rushed thing. It was, we were thinking we were buying one system and then changed to another system. All this was done. And, you know, I used to sell this stuff, and I would sometimes work with a jurisdiction for 2 years doing multiple trials and mock elections and things like this. This was done in a month or less. And we were not that familiar with the equipment or what it would entail to take care of it. We can do it, except I just don't have the personnel to do it. And then that's sort of exacerbated by the fact that the equipment's on the other side of the county from us. And so going back and forth wastes a lot of time.
Where do we house?
It's housed in Sugar Land on Industrial Drive.
Oh, I know where that is.
Yeah, but
John?
let me do this. Before we get into it, of course, in 2020, you know that you mentioned about vendors being good, but in my opinion, they were not. And so when we got the machine in 2020, that was not, we have noticed. So what I will suggest is let's hear, I will invite Robin to come and what you experienced, what is your thought and how we can address this issue. And John, please wait. You could take a seat, and Robin, if you would come and explain how we can, because at the end of the day, this issue, we cannot put any issue up front because election, it's a very different world we are living in, and you know it got to be. We cannot put any doubt on people's mind, and I got phone calls, and I'm sure everybody sitting here, elected officials, got phone calls last time. So, what is your thought, and what is more than this is not about who didn't do what and when, and that is not the issue. What do we do moving forward? And so we discussed in the last meeting about these issues, and you specifically specifically send reports. Yes. So my question is, a number of issues we noticed. What is your opinion? Because as you remember, maybe you remember, we had a closed session discussion about this issue, and obviously we cannot talk that here because it is a closed session discussion with commissioners. And so, being said that, what is your thought, and how do you think? I'm not only talking about the computer part. Right. Everything else is John. And so what is your thought, how we can connect it better, and how we can, I don't want any issues in 2020. I mean, it's not like you can guarantee there is no issues, but I think, Mercy, we have to keep that door open, I think, because it's an open meeting.
Judge, can I ask a question directly to the IT department? I guess my question to you is, like I was getting ready to ask John earlier, I was in the 2020 race, and there were a lot of difficulties, which I truly believe, like I think the judge just said earlier, that IT is IT, and if anything go wrong with my computer, IT come in and fix it. I'm going to back up from it. I respect the election judge and everything, but being at the actual locations and stuff like that, I've seen a lot of complications with IT department. Not trying to blame it on you, not trying to blame it on election people. What I'm trying to find out is, I understand that the presidential race is a race that is huge, and a lot of things went on, a lot of things goes on, and also in the governor's race. And I'm hoping and praying that we don't have the problem that we had in, I think it was Hightower, where we had to move the people from downstairs upstairs. And do we have the manpower to take care of that? Because even though we say that this race is not a big race, this governor's race is a big race. And everybody knows I don't know if we're going to have the voter turnout like we did before, but we don't want to be looking crazy across the county. And all 5 of us sitting up here, and people are calling us like they did before, several phone calls, and us standing there, and we have a problem. I don't want to say it was IT, and I don't want to say it was election hall, but it was a problem somewhere where the ball was dropped. That's my problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, what is your thought? Please share it.
Okay.
So our biggest challenge was the hardwire tablets that were used. That was the biggest challenge, and the vendor, Votech, acknowledged that as well. They are actually working on a prototype to fix that. So if you recall, the tablets at each voting...
They're working on the prototype to fix that.
They're working on a prototype to hardwire.
This issue happened a year ago.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we are going to have an election in 2 months, 2.5 months. Early voting start February 16th or something like that. Yeah. So, so still we don't have a solution, you're saying?
That is correct. About 2 weeks ago, we received an update from the vendor, from the owner, and he informed us that the prototype, in his words, was not up to snuff. And he is still working on it, trying to resolve it. He acknowledges that there are issues with the tablet, with it being Bluetooth technology. That is a challenge because as you're going into each election site, you're asking everybody to turn off their cell phones. Maybe they don't turn their cell phones off. They forget. They may have it.
So this is definitely one thing we have noticed is the Bluetooth technology was an issue. So what is your thought? How we can address that issue without they say, oh, we created another version or this or that. We still don't know this issue is going to persist. Yeah. It's going to be there. So what is your thought? I mean, how do we address that without talking about Bluetooth? How do we address that? Hardwire?
I mean, the only way to do it is to hardwire it. We're kind of at the mercy of the vendor, waiting for them. It's their equipment, their products. We're waiting for them to enhance their products so that we can have better connectivity.
And so did you have any conversation with election administration about it?
John has been on the calls.
Okay.
The last call that we had with Votech, John,
okay.
Our John, was on that call.
Okay. And so there is no issue with that, right? Because I think that's the only way we are going to address that issue. Because I don't think, in my opinion, I cannot talk for other members here, but hardwiring is the only way. That's what I heard from other people to make sure this issue doesn't come up?
It's recommended, and so and it's IT's recommendation. And I'll
Okay.
give you an example. If you have a laptop and you're plugged into, let's say, the county network, you're better connected if you have a hard wire. You physically have a wire going from your computer or docking station to the network cable or drop.
Okay. So did you have any conversation with the vendor and what it take to do that? And you know that what commissioners expressed their concern, and also you know that that was a discussion item. So where do we go from here? Because also you got to remember around 75 days maybe we are into an election cycle.
Yes. So we're just periodically we're checking in with the vendor to see what the status is and how soon that we can get it. Right now, the prototype that he's working on, he said that it's not working. He's also talked about shipping delays. So my interpretation of that is that we are going to have an issue come March or February.
So you're talking about the prototype. Is that also a Bluetooth version or a hardware?
Hardwired version,
Okay.
a physical wire.
So what do we do? Where do we go with that? I mean, I don't think we can mess with that. That need to be done. So any of our board members have any?
I have a question. It is currently Bluetooth, and cell phone usage may cause us a problem, interference.
That's just one example. Yes,
I mean, that's
correct.
probably one thing, right? When I go in, I turn mine silent. I don't turn mine off, okay?
I don't either.
Because I know I can't use it or anything like that, so I just see. Okay, fixing this. That's something that the company, the vendor, has to do. Question?
It is. So how we addressed this last November, that's your backup plan, honestly. Because if the vendor isn't capable of fixing this in time, then what we did last November, I had between 30 to 35 people that came out, my staff and contractors, to assist John and his team with being on site at each site so that we could triage and work each issue as it happened.
Okay. I guess we have no control over the vendor. Let me caveat there and say John spoke about the maintenance agreement.
That's
somebody else.
Discussion.
Okay, well, while I'm bringing it up, that's I don't know what that entails, and if it's still available, we probably need to get that, even though that's another system. Now, back to what we're talking about. Since we are at the mercy of this vendor, and what you did last time was placed IT staff and contractors at each voting location. Are we planning to put that in place, since there's no guarantee that we're going to have this by February 4th, because I don't feel hopeful about it because he hasn't figured it out yet. You see what I'm saying? It's not like he's implementing, just hasn't figured out how it can happen. So are we going to have a set system in place so that we have that person there? I don't have to tell anybody that this election is going to be volatile. Not anybody's fault in here of our own. It's going to be a hot mess, if you will. So the last thing we're going to need is equipment issues.
Yes.
So, I don't know that side of it. But let's put our backup system in place. If we don't need it, hallelujah. But so that every location is covered. Some of the things we experience is just, and then when elections have to work with all of these buildings. See, that's another issue we have, only partial or no control on. Oh, no, you can't use this room. No, you can't use that room. And that was like the high tower. And then where they went was a hot mess. And then they had to move to another location, which So all those things, they're beyond our control, but yet we get stuck with them. So this issue we know about, and I think we need to have that in place.
Cynthia, there is a discussion, and actually I think briefly talk about what it takes to hardwire, because I don't think an election we can calculate in such a way. Yeah, I hope everything works. It's not going to work like that. So is there any conversation with the election department? And so maybe if we don't get through or the vendor didn't come through, that means we are going to go and do it. County is going to go and do it, and later we will deal with that issue. So any conversation with the election department, or what is your thought on it? Because we cannot. I mean, to be honest with you, that's going to be a mess. We all know. Overnight, you have to put together like almost 20 members of your team, which was not existed. So I don't think we can go through that discussion again. So what is your thought? What it take to hardwire these locations?
So to hardwire, I would need the vendor to do that, and the backup plan would be to kind of bring in the resources. And so what I've done, Commissioner's Court has provided me with 2 additional employees, one resource that is solely dedicated to elections and does desktop support. And then I have another individual who's kind of my desktop support supervisor, and her responsibility is to kind of manage all of desktop installations. And so during election time, she will also be assisting with that. It's just 2 resources, though, and John and I have had that discussion. He mentioned earlier that we had a resource before that was dedicated to elections. It's not feasible for us to provide a lot of folks, but we can surely with those 2 people that's a good start. When we go back to the election coming up, my advice is that coming before you guys that we make that decision. How many sites do we need staffed, and that we plan for
and
same
also
type of support.
What do we do to talk to the vendor, and they have to do something about it? This is a year later we are talking about they created a prototype and it is not even working properly, and so what do we do there?
Judge, not to interrupt, but we just signed a new contract on our cash machines, correct, Keisha? And our contract ran out, and we called them on the phone, and they did another year contract or 2-year contract where they come out and service. Well, they come out twice a year now, right, to service our cash machines, which is, I don't know, I'm the tax assessor collector. That's one of the biggest parts of the county is taking cash in. So y'all might want to see if y'all can renew the contract, and it really needs to be done now if it's coming up on the year. So you might want to check with that.
Are you talking about the voting equipment?
For the voting
It's
equipment.
two different.
It's 2 different things, but they have contracts to service the machines. That's what we did.
Yeah, we opted not to do that because we felt like.
Sir, if you would come to because it's won't pick up. Robin, don't go away.
Okay, I will point out that we just ran an election we ran an election in May, had maybe one Bluetooth issue. We had none in November. So again, we think a lot of this was training. Part of it was delivery. We didn't get the stuff when we expected to because the cases were made overseas and they got hung up just like things sit around in a boat now. We didn't have enough equipment, and then as most of you know, we dug ourselves a hole on the first day of early voting because when we programmed the election, we set it up for early voting to begin on a specific day. Right. And you do that so somebody can't get into that system and mess around with it before, the night before the election, the judge who has access to it get around and do that. When the governor extended early voting by a week, we simply did not change that. So that meant nobody could log on election morning.
So John, that is where the question is, because that's where an IT department dealing with that kind of situation is because, Robin, can you come forward for that? How do you launch a product? How do you launch a product if it is something new? How do you do that?
So,
how many times you dry run it and this and that? And I guess that's how you do it, right?
Yes. So we have I have a project management office, and their sole responsibility is for driving every project, no matter what area that it falls into. So you do the analysis, you review it, make a plan, implement it, you follow up to see how well it went, tweak it, make sure and just repeat the cycle.
Right. Right. Okay. So what I'm understanding is if IT is engaged in these things, that would have never happened. And because, John, I know you got phone calls and I got phone calls and I had nothing to do with it. And people reach out from Washington, D.C., and we cannot afford any of that problems, And so,
we welcome IT support, but IT didn't know this system. They would have to have learned it. Most of these voting systems have agreements that you can't manipulate any of the software, you can't make any modifications. So, yeah, IT would be of value, but it goes back to basically to a coding mistake we made, and it really wasn't a mistake. When we did it, it was right. Just the dates changed. So then we and we tested this equipment. The only thing was it did not pick that up because we were in a testing environment which didn't care about the date. As a result of that, we've changed the way we test this equipment so that we will we'll manually change the date on the laptops to the first day of early voting or to election day in order to test. So we've learned from that mistake and put in procedures to keep something like that from ever happening again. But as I said, bear in mind we've run several elections without problems with the Bluetooth. That was
so. Let me ask you this, John. You're saying you're 100%. You're on the record saying that right now.
I'm not on the record saying 100%. I'm on the record saying we've run several elections without.
No, that's okay. My question is, I'm concerned about moving forward. What is going to happen in March and in November? And you feel very confident. You feel. I'm not saying 100%. Nobody can say 100%. You feel very confident the way the system is set up right now. We are going to have minimal or no issues.
I would feel better with a hardwired system.
No, feeling better is.
I would feel better with a hardwired system.
Okay.
I think that again, based upon what we've seen since November, that I'm not overly concerned. Our concern is mainly with poll workers and them not following the correct procedures and starting things up. The connectivity issue, the Bluetooth issue, happens when they turn on multiple units at the same time and then they get confused about whom they are connecting with. We've got them convinced to turn on this one, wait a few minutes, turn on this one, wait a few minutes, turn on this one. So we've not seen that issue since November, I think once in May. That's largely an unfamiliarity with the equipment and a training issue. We brought all our poll workers in last March and April, and put them through 5 hours of training. It cost a lot of money to do that, but we did it, and that cut down on a lot of things. But the other thing you got to remember is that, if we're going into this primary, Cynthia and Linda and I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about poll workers. In the primary, we will have 2 co-judges. We only have half as many as we need, so they're hopefully trying to find some more. But an election's kind of like opening a department store. You don't get to hire you do it for one day with 600 employees, but you don't get to hire them. Somebody else sends them to you. So sometimes we get the right people. Sometimes we get people that are political that aren't the right people, and you both know who some of them are. But again, we're doing the best we can to try to get these people trained and educated. And sometimes we had 3 judges between 4 a.m. and 7 p.m. on the 1st of November, call in and say we are not working. So therefore we got to have replacements for them. Those are things that create issues.
Okay, John. So you mentioned about IT could be a resource,
they
are a resource,
yes.
And so every department in the county use them as a resource, and
we used them in this past election as a resource.
And so my question is, how do we engage, or how do you engage them? They understand technology better than you and I do. And when it comes to election administration, sir, you are in charge of it. And that's how they do it in the justice system, because they are the one managing it, but when it comes to the details or whatever that function is done by the justice system, the judges or whoever that is. And so how do we engage them so that we could eliminate what we are talking here? Bottom line is, we don't want any issues.
We don't want any issues either.
Yeah, we don't want any issues, and also at that time coming and saying, hey, we did something, we didn't do something, we should have done something. That's not a solution, and that's why we are here.
It's an understanding of what caused the problem and what steps we take to.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. You feel confident about everything will be all right?
I'd like to say that given where we're moving, information technology, if I could just add, I decided to pick up a package from Amazon because there's a center very close to me instead of having it delivered. I'm still in awe. Had a little problem finding the door because I was looking for locker box. Pinata is her name, and I found it. There's a double doors. You all, I had my code. The little computer deal is there, and there are these locker boxes. I put my code in, scanned, that came on email. Locker open. The computer said, your locker is to the left. I looked up. I got my package out, closed it, and then I sat there dumbfounded. That was it. I shared that little personal story to say our elections have changed, whether we want it to or not. And this system is just, and we get something else, it's still going to be another thing. My message to you, John, is don't bear this burden by yourself.
No, we welcome IT's help.
Robin, I'm sorry, but don't bear this burden because it apparently has gotten to the point where it's so integrated, wherein it wasn't as much before, and it's very integrated, and with this whole system of the Bluetooth versus the hard wiring and all those kinds of things. And I want to commend you for looking at what caused the problems last time so that you could laser in and figure out what we needed to do, and user issues just don't even go there because I understand it so well, John.
What we have is a Bluetooth system, and that's what we bought. They didn't do a bait and switch on us, and the reason we got that was for curbside voting, so you could take a tablet off and take it to curbside. We've decided not to do that. We're using paper for curbside voters, as far as going out and having them sign in. But that was the beauty of this Bluetooth, was to be able to detach that tablet, walk outside with it, or to the closest place.
I think we all love Bluetooth.
Few other discussion item we have. Cynthia, you finish that conversation?
Yes, I am.
And so one thing I will ask John, or even also Robin, what it take to the vendor to come up with some solution as hot wiring in a next, whatever the time frame we have available.
And again, whatever they do, we will have I don't think this will be done by March, because we've got to, not only they have to have a solution, but the Secretary of State has to approve that solution. All this stuff is certified. So
yeah, sure.
I don't think that will happen by March, because they only do this, I think, in January and in June on system certification. So I don't expect that for the primary. Maybe we'll get it by November,
so
and I would welcome
my
that.
question is, John, if we ever had this conversation, because this issue happened a year ago.
It did.
And so after a year later, they are saying they still don't have a solution.
They're the vendor. I don't know why they don't have a solution, if it's delivery issues, if it's,
We don't know, but the thing about it is we need answers and we need solutions. So that's where we need to hold. What is that?
Then let's invite the vendor here to talk about it.
We could do that. John would probably fly out.
Yeah, and what I suggest is you have to have that conversation, and and they have to fix this issue.
Well, I think, Judge, they have had the conversation over and over again, and the vendor is saying we don't have it yet. So I think it's probably a good solution. We need to hear from the vendor.
Yeah.
Have the vendor here and say, look, we need this. We need you to deliver. We need to deliver in a timely manner, which you apparently
Okay.
have not.
Right.
Absolutely. Very well.
And, you know, we're upset about this. And, you know, we
Okay.
paid you the money and on all honest faith, thinking that, you know, we would have a system that would be free of these type of glitches. And so explain yourself.
So I think the best thing is the board pretty much, I believe, unanimously believe the vendor need to be communicated, and we are not happy about what is going on. We like to hear, and even, I don't know, we need a meeting. We could send communication, whatever the communication you are hearing from, to the board members. Love to see that, you know, some kind of a conversation happening with the vendor.
And we talked to the vendor. We're talking to the vendor right now because of these redistricting
No, we
issues.
need to have something in writing saying that how they're going to address this issue.
But at what point, let's say we never got this fixed, at what point, how many elections do we have to run without an issue before we say there's really not a problem and acknowledge it was a training?
So yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I realize that you're saying there are not issues, but I want to just, I provided this summary to you guys, so I want you to hear what the number was that we had in November 2020. So total tickets that I received, meaning issues, was 393 for the time period of early voting all the way to Election Day. Some of those are different areas, so ES&S, equipment issues, 125. For the VOTEC kiosk issues, 140. And we also had VOTEC kiosk issues that were MiFi related, and those are 43.
so
Those are a lot of issues to have in November. I have no confidence that the vendor is going to have this resolved and fixed in time for us to go to the next election.
So let me ask you this here. I understand we need to talk to the vendor. That's a must. I agree with everybody on that. But at the end of the day, this board right here will be looking crazy once again. So there's an election. I think John does a great job at what he's doing. I think IT does a great job at what they're doing. But at the end of the day, we have to come up with a solution to the problem, and we have to come up with it now, because this here is going to be a big election, whether y'all believe it or not. It is going to be. We all agree with that. IT needs to be handling IT stuff. Let me tell you, at the tax office, I'm the person that's up front, just like at your office, Lauren. But at the end of the day, it's 100 people that help me look good every time. And if that lady right there wasn't sitting across this room, I probably wouldn't look as good as I do look right now. I'll be stressed. So my thing is, can IT take care of what IT? Because I've been at those things, and what happened at those places out there, Miss Cynthia, I've seen you running around. I've seen you come out there. Y'all know that at the end of the day, when we had to switch at Hightower from upstairs, from them going up the stairs to come downstairs, that was an IT problem. It wasn't a John problem.
That was a Fort ISD problem.
It doesn't matter, no matter who it was. The point is, you had to bring the electrical stuff downstairs. That's my point, right? Mm-hmm. Could John do that without you?
Yeah, we could.
He could.
Again, there was a situation
But we got to fix it now.
Yeah.
We got to find out.
okay. So
You know what I'm saying?
hold on 1
in
second.
one place, and then
Yeah.
Fort ISD moved us to
Yeah, I think that all probably
This is one
also
situation out
in
of
John's
that
work.
big long
Yeah.
list that you just gave me.
Yeah.
So now is the time to figure out who we're going to put in place to do these things. You only have 2 people you just mentioned to me. 2 people is not a lot
Two
of
people. Yeah, you're
to
correct.
do what you got to do.
Yes.
And then John needs somebody in his office, from my understanding, that be run IT or running the IT for the IT department with the election hour. John has one job and you have another job, a leader.
So my suggestion, based on everything that I've
Sure.
heard, is that working with John and you all come up with a plan where I go and look at the number of voting sites that we have before, and I determine how many people that we need each site. I realize John is saying that there are no issues that we've had, but based on the November election, I don't feel confident that those issues aren't going to pop back up. Okay. So if we look at staffing and then present that plan back, and that's our backup plan, and we have that available.
Okay, so let's do that on the record. So you guys work together and come up with a backup plan, because we don't have a solution for what is that, and John is feeling confident about it will be okay, and so let's have a backup plan and let the board know what it is, and how do, just in case if we run into this issue, how do we address it? Because at that point, nothing you can, we have to have a plan. And so otherwise, it's going to be a problem. So I believe you guys, both of you, have to sit down and come up with a backup plan. And hoping, as John showed confident, no problem will be.
I don't
there
think
won't
he's
be
saying
any
there's no problems, Judge. I didn't hear him say that.
No. That's not what.
They've had huge problems. I do have a question for Robin, though. And I heard you speak to the number of tickets in November 2020, which was that's big, And I realized this year, we've had very small elections.
Yeah.
How many tickets did you have from this year? Because I'm just thinking percentage-wise.
I don't have that with me now.
Okay, I'd like to know that number.
Yes.
Okay.
I will get the number of tickets. I know.
Thank you.
At one of the elections that we've had this year, I think I provided 20 people. That was more than what
Okay.
John needed.
Okay.
And I acknowledge that. And so the next election, whatever number he told us, that is the number that we provided. I think it was 8 at that next election.
We did 4 rovers to help feed us field text, and we did 4 site support for remote collection sites for the data. So,
Okay. So let's come up.
May
with
I say that, yes, as far as the vendor goes, right now for me that's a side issue because we all have common sense. We don't work for that company, but we have common sense. But we know that's not going to be fully in place by February 14th.
Right, correct.
Even if he figures it out in the next minute, it won't be what we need February 14th. So
I would even
dealing
want
with
it
the
early,
vendor is dealing with the vendor. Frankly, I don't want to hear from him. Just fix it. I don't want to hear a thing from him. I mean, I go along with whatever the committee says. Okay?
Well, we paid him a lot of money. That's why I said it, I guess.
I understand. I agree with you, Laura. That's just my personal thing. Just fix it. Let's have that system in place. I think you said you provided John something and he didn't even need it. And John has no crystal ball. Why don't you have one, John? You ought to have one, John. So John has no crystal ball. So John has had some experiences where things have gone in a way that he approved of. And we hope that is the case. But what if it isn't? Then we want a plan in place that if we've got a dispatch, to these places and these folks on standby, ready to go if, all heaven breaks loose.
Cynthia, so that maybe we could conclude that, you guys sit together and create a backup plan.
So
And that is, anybody disagree with that?
I totally agree with that. So when is the next time that we may hear from the two of you guys? I mean, I would love to hear where we are because I don't like waiting to the last minute if you don't
Like
mind.
maybe in a 30-day period, that's my thought, but whatever.
Do we
the
have
board
30
decides.
days left? Do we?
No. We have a little over maybe 70 days left. Maybe? No.
Early
not
voting
70.
starts February 14th.
14th, yeah.
It's getting closer.
I can commit. We've got a large workload based on the redistricting, but I can commit
Yeah.
to the
forgot to
first,
mention
second
that.
week in January with providing a summary back
Okay.
to you all.
So
I can't
that's,
commit to the first week because I'm going to be at a training session.
Okay.
yeah, okay.
And let me tell you, this wasn't a right match. I think both of y'all do a great job. Please believe we all believe that y'all do a great job, but we just don't want to be looking crazy. We could agree when election come around and we know something's gonna.
Yeah, 'cause see-
something not gonna happen. Something's
So
gonna fail.
January
And we're going
15th is
to have some other issues.
Yeah.
So let us not have,
That issue.
our system, hardware and software issues. Because we're
So
going to have other stuff to deal with.
Yes, ma'am.
That's why, for example, that's why
Okay.
we all met.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can I conclude this conversation by saying at least by January 15th?
That is Saturday.
16, 17, Monday.
Monday, January 17th.
17th is a Monday, right? So by January 17th,
So.
we
Is that
could-
Martin Luther King Day? I think that's Martin Luther King. Yeah.
So they'll be closed. Right.
So come up with a plan so that everybody feel comfortable about
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah, so say
county office.
that Friday the 14th, that's a month before it starts.
Yeah, let's maybe.
You're correct. A month before, so that's
A
fine.
So
month
let's do that.
before early voting
Let's
starts.
do that
and-
then
yeah.
14th. So 14th.
Yeah, January 14th.
January 14th. By January 14th, we will hear a backup plan. And also with that, I think, Robin, you could maybe sit down for a few minutes.
Okay.
So, John, another suggestion came up is we are hearing from so many people. I personally feel like our election location timings have to be all same. There won't be any differences. Our election is 7 to 7, and our early voting location should be open 7 to 7. That's my thought, and I'd like to hear what
7 to
our board members, what they feel.
What, I missed what you're proposing.
So what I'm saying is we have some locations. We have some locations open at 8 o'clock and close at 5. And some locations open at 10 and close
Not
at 7.
anymore, we don't. That was,
Yeah.
we haven't done that for a year. That was changed by the legislature last session so that all sites have to be open the same hours. Now, the downside of that is that, and that's not a bad thing. It didn't bother us too much, except sometimes in the past, maybe we've wanted to have early voting at Simonton for 2 days. We can't do that anymore. They all have to be open the same.
So what I
weekly
feel
schedule.
like, John, it should be like every other election day, 7 to 7. That's my thought.
Well,
and I'd like to hear from other board members.
But I think a standard time is easier probably for all of us involved, even for, I'm not talking voters, I'm talking me. 7 to 7. Normally, it is 7 to 7 that second week of early voting.
In a major election.
In the major election, the week before, it's a little different. And also, it's easier from what I do, but I know it's easier for voters. And for those people who get off at 5, well, they can't make an 8 to 5, or those people who get off at 4:30, they may not be able to get there. So if we could standardize it 7 to 7, just across the board, we know that early voting, 7 to 7, election day, 7 to 7, and we're done. Sometimes when I'm sharing with not constituents, but cohorts or whatever, I got to say, wait a minute, because that library is probably not open, may not be open that day, or which site are you talking about? So I got to look that up. So if I could eliminate it, if we could eliminate that just from the operational side for me and people like me, let alone the voters, it would be a good thing.
Well, we would probably anyway do 7 to 7 next November. Haven't decided on the primary. Some of that may be dependent upon how many people file. If there's uncontested races, we don't expect turnout to be that great. But it's a strain on our poll workers to do that. Right. And most of these people are over 65, are early voting workers because they're retirees or unemployed. So that's a major strain on them, because it's not till 7, it's till when they do their paperwork and they get out of there, and they get things up and going in the morning. So minimally it's a 6:30 to or 6 a.m. to probably 7:45 or 8 p.m. So and you do that 2 weeks in a row. That's really hard on people. It doesn't. And I'm not saying that from our standpoint. We're there anyway.
I know.
But on these poll workers, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge, yeah. And well, moving forward, I mean, because everything has just changed on us, John. We didn't ask for it.
No. And we've been trying to find more early voting sites for years.
Given that we have older workers, and thank goodness for them, retired people, I'm working feverishly on trying to get us some people my age, because they're so much younger. Yeah. I don't know what that looks like, but given the fact that we have some very senior people who work and work well for us, and the stamina issue comes in, I think here's another nouveau. It's time for us to start figuring out how do we address that, because we've got a wonderful worker who doesn't have that kind of stamina. We don't want to lose that worker, but we still want these polls open. Then how do we supplement Miss Shirley because she's our great worker, but who just cannot handle 13 hours a day. And I can't handle it myself. You know I don't. So
Yeah,
what can we do, John? I haven't thought about it.
One of the things you can do is stagger their hours.
Okay.
But that means you have to have more workers, and we have a hard time getting what we need. Now, and then during early voting, particularly with the pay at $20 an hour, we have a lot of people that no matter how dead tired they are, they want to keep stay there so they get that bigger paycheck. But that's an issue that's largely in the hands of parties too, because it's you'll have to either find these people or back us up if we say, well, Mr. Smith, you just can't do this anymore. Yeah.
Well, I hate to say this, but it sounds like y'all got your hands filled.
Well,
So,
Y'all got to find some more people because we need the polls open from 7
Exactly.
to 7.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm working on it,
And-
and I think the $20, Judge,
we
is
increased
a
that
nice
pay last
nice.
time.
I know
Because
you
we
did.
appreciate them. We do.
Sure.
And so, John, this is actually also, please take it as a minute item. So we have to come up with a plan how you're going to do it 7 to 7. There is with no confusion to voters, otherwise it is confusion. So please come up with that option, how you do it. And so that is also, you could maybe present it to us.
Is that for every election that you're proposing that?
No,
Every
main
election?
elections. Main elections.
You talking about the
Main
big-
elections. Okay,
Yeah.
that wasn't made clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't.
And your main elections are primary and general, correct?
Primary and general, and also
Just wanna make sure.
runoff elections too. Because-
Runoffs are not.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not a main election, but still we cannot.
Of course,
confuse
in
it.
runoffs, we might do it anyway because in runoff early voting is only 5 days.
Yeah. So please, that is another item. Please look into it and what we need to do. And
I think the biggest thing is us finding new, because I seen you emailed something earlier today. Well, I got it
And
last
she's
night.
getting some bites.
Yeah.
and so
you probably
people.
have to do the same thing.
Yeah, we will find people, and that's the reason why last time that we made that changes because we wanted to appreciate the election workers.
But
and-
not only do we have to find them, we have to find them in time so that we can train them.
Train them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Train them.
Yes.
And so that is also a plan. Just you should come up with something 30 days before when we talk about the other items. So any other issues?
Judge, you know that if we do extend the hours, which I think we are going to extend the hours, we still going to
Actually, I don't want us to be argumentative, but the hours are my decision and mine alone. So
Okay, well, if we do
the
that-
sites are the
If we do
commissioners'
that,
call.
you know, we also have to be concerned about IT department being to stick
Yeah.
around to help out.
And so
I
this
agree
is the
with
thing, though, John. Maybe it is your decision, but end of the day, what we are trying to say or do is what I'm trying to say or do is we are getting people coming to us and talking to us about these issues because many times 5 o'clock somebody cannot get out of their work to go to the polls, and so that confusion is always a problem, and so try to avoid it.
Well,
And
we
please
will.
make sure we are sending a clear message to people so that they don't have any confusion where to go, what to do, and what time they need to get there, kind of thing. So,
One more thing, Judge. Go.
I was just going to say, what is the standard in the state right now for hours?
Hours, it varies. Some of them are, and it varies depending on the size. The rules for counties under 75,000 are different than they are for us. They can
Right.
have a little bit more flexibility in hours. But again, for example, in this election we just had, we had 2 days at one of our sites. They had less than 5 voters, and we have 3 people working there.
Right.
So those are each one of those voters are about $600 voters. So those are the things that we have to kind of avoid. I think that, one of the things that we've discussed internally, if we want to go to 7 that first week, is maybe to go 9 to 7 instead of 7 to 7. If the issue is people getting off work, to start it a little later in the day. I know that some counties who have gone 7 to 7 or even longer hours, I guess that's not the case. The statute says that we have to have 2 12-hour days. It doesn't say when. We've always done it the last 2 days of early voting, for example. But some counties may do it the next to last and the third to the last day. That way, Reason being is that the last night of early voting, they're there for a long time doing paperwork, putting things down, and you don't want to keep them there till 10.
Is there any other issues? Please look into it and let us know. Any other issues?
Let me say this here, Judge, before we go anywhere. The reason that we said that is because if you come down 59, most of the people that live out here in Richmond and in this area out here in Fort Bend County go back to town, which is Harris County, to work. And it takes you an hour to come down that freeway.
I understand that.
And 5 o'clock. So I don't mind if we start a little bit later to make sure we're open when they get off work. Some people go in the morning, but whatever convenient for you to help.
Yeah, we do 12 hours on Saturday. Well, we didn't this Saturday, but we'll do 12 hours on always. That's statutory on the primary and the general. We've now, by statute, increased the hours on Sunday voting. We don't open at all our sites on Sundays because some of them are churches, for example.
So
Right.
that is good. Any other issues?
Judge, one other thing that I'd like to say, to ask John about. Since you've been speaking, you spoke to some stats where some polling locations were barely being used, if I recall. Mm-hmm. At some other time, I would like to look at that with you, or you can send Linda and me something on that, because if we have sites that you have data to prove that they're not being used, we need to massage that.
Well, for example, Travis Elementary had less than 40 voters.
Okay.
Pinnacle had less than 40 voters, I believe.
Okay.
But the thing is, when we went to vote centers, one of our goals was to try to be consistent in these sites so that people didn't have to chase their polling place.
Sure.
So if they went to Travis in a presidential election, they would know they could go to Travis in a school board election or a city election. Now, some of those we probably could get rid of, but everybody has a vested interest. If we get rid of Pinnacle, some people won't be happy, even though there's only a handful of voters go.
Well, were you speaking to a school?
Cynthia, can we please, because we could talk all these details, and I have to get out of here.
We'll get together.
Yeah, so let's have that conversation individually. I think we should do a 7 to 7. 1 minute, ma'am. 7 to 7, but it is. You said it is your decision, but that's. I still feel we should do that. And so, with that, any other issues our board members want?
I had one. The last meeting we had. Hopefully, you were going to ask for and get staff and funding and what else? I was just going to ask what happened.
We did receive one additional position. We had a couple reclassifications, but that's the same people doing slightly different jobs. But we did get one new position. We'd asked for 3. If I had 3, I think we could do the maintenance on the equipment, or preventing maintenance ourselves. But at this point, we're just barely treading water with the new one. Now, bear in mind the new one didn't come on until October, so it's not like we had them all summer being available. But I think that we still need at least 2 more to be able to handle the preventing maintenance on this equipment. And if it is, cost analysis, it might be cheaper to have the vendor do it. Then it's on them. So,
your new staff is tech related?
The new staff is somewhat tech related. Some of this stuff we do is preparing the equipment, doing testing on it, preparing supplies, packing cabinets, working out logistics, these things. But the person we did hire, and he went from a part-time to a full-time position, is largely tech.
Okay. I was also concerned about I'm trying to call the position, not the name, okay? Because it's not the person in the back that does all the ballot by mail, the applications over there, okay? You with me? I feel I'm thinking we need some more help there.
Yeah.
Well, we do have more help there. And, for example, we had another person there full-time in November 2020 who's a floater in the county. She's worked in the judge's office. She's worked in our office. And we also had some temps. The problem with temps, for example, the first day we sent out ballot by mail, we had about 8 temps folding and stuffing, and they put them in the wrong envelopes.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
you know, that's the
Exactly.
downside
Thank you.
there.
Thank you. That's all
Okay,
logistics.
well, hang on, excuse me, but I just want to confirm that you asked for additional help, but you haven't received.
I asked for 3 new positions. I got 1.
Okay.
And I was surprised to get the 1. I was very happy, grateful
Okay.
to the court
Okay.
to get the 1.
Because that was an issue at our last meeting, that you were kind of raked over the coals for that.
Well, for example, Hidalgo County, I think, has 22 people in their election office.
And how many do you?
22.
Okay.
How many
have-
do you have?
We have, with me, I think it is, with our full-time, I think I'm the 11th.
At 11.
Okay,
Hidalgo is bigger than us?
No, Hidalgo's
real
smaller.
quick, because I know
They're
Judge got to get out of here.
Population-wise, they're bigger, but registered voters, they're about 100,000 less.
Real
So,
quick, because I
John-
know Judge got to get out of here. Did any of us get any employees? Maybe got blessed to have 1 or 2
I
like he
understand.
did. So
It's a-
we all had the problem across the county. It wasn't
And,
just John.
and also, I just
but-
wanted to add here, John. You need whatever you need to ask, and you need to
Well, he
ask.
has
You need to
asked.
fight for it, because what happened is, what are you trying to do? A fair election, and which commissioner is going to say, or me say, oh, you're not getting it? If you're saying you asked for 3, you got 1, and you need to ask for 3 or whatever you need, because
Well-
you're trying to run the election. And so anyway, being said that, and I'm always supportive of, without people you cannot do your work. And so I'm always supportive of it, and thank you for all that good stuff. And so, ma'am, you have all the details here. So, and I appreciate the board being here. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, you move. Okay, with no objection, this special meeting is now adjourned. It is 2:40.